being recorded.
Sponsored by Copper Services, today's webinar, Humanize Your B2B Marketing. Don't just communicate with customers, connect with them, is presented by Kathy Klotz-Guest. Kathy Klotz-Guest is founder of Keeping It Human, a marketing and communications company that helps clients succeed by making human connections with their customers. Kathy turns marketing speak into powerful human speak. What makes Kathy different? 20 years in successful marketing and communications combined with a background in improvisation, comedy, and storytelling. A popular speaker, blogger, and marketer, she has developed marketing and communication strategies for companies such as SGI, Excite, Gartner, Autodesk, Yahoo, Intermolecular, and Cisco. Kathy is a founding fellow for the Society of New Communications Research and is a marketing director for the 2012 Silicon Valley Product Camp and Applied Improvisation Network conferences. She received an MA from Stanford University and an MBA in marketing from UC Berkeley. At this point, I would like to turn the call over to Kathy. Kathy, you may now begin.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making the time to be here today. So happy Friday, wherever you are. I'm delighted that you're here. I will speak for about 45 minutes or so, and in keeping with keeping it human, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the talk for any questions that you might have. All right, so let's jump on in. Ross already talked about me. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it human. So I want to start by talking about something that we already know is going on. We know that we're living in an age of so much jargon. I don't need to tell everybody that. If you look at a lot of the marketing that you're getting, jargon is everywhere, especially if you're in B2B, and especially if you're in technology. The problem is we can't continue with business as usual in marketing. We can't pretend that that stuff works anymore. And I'll talk about that in a second. But we all know it doesn't anymore. There's just too much. Everybody is revolutionary. Everybody is game-changing. Everybody is disruptive. And if you have to tell everybody you're game-changing and disruptive, well, folks, you're probably not. That's the premise number one. So the thing is, there's so much noise out there, and it's really gotten worse, and it's going to get worse. And nobody likes that kind of stuff. I like to say that, you know, get your paradigm shift out of my face, and I want anti-social media. Get the heck out of my Facebook, because there's just too much out there. I did for the beginning of the year, I do a New Year's campaign every year, and I put out one that got the highest response of anything I've done, and it was jargonorrhea. Stop jargonorrhea. Stop this insidious textually transmitted disease. And it got so much response because I think it really resonated with everybody. There's just so much out there. Instead of saying what we really mean and really connecting at a human level with our audience, we're over-communicating, and we're saying nothing of value at all. So I want us to just keep that in mind for the rest of the talk today and beyond. Forget the jargon. Jargon doesn't work anymore. Better way. So when did this marketing crap explosion happen? Well, I think there's a couple of things propelling this, and I think it's important to put it into context so we can understand why this doesn't work anymore, especially in B2B. And B2B, by the way, could learn a lot of things from business to consumer. We have a really interesting kind of set of variables happening today. We've never had more information at our fingertips as customers, whether we're business customers or we're individual consumers. There is so much information. We're living in the age of Google. We're living in the age of big data, and it's going to get worse. More and more data means more and more to index, and more stuff out there. Now, the toll that this takes is it hits us in sort of splitting our attention. We have to filter. We have to filter because there's just too much coming at us every day. So as volume goes up, our attention goes down. And there's something really important in addition to that that's happening, and that is the deficit of trust today. Every year, the big PR agency Edelman does their Edelman Trust Barometer, and they've done it for 12 years in a row. And this past year, it's continued a trend of erosion of trust. And in that survey, what was discovered was that 92% 92% of respondents don't trust anything that corporations tell us. And we're seeing that play out in the news right now. A year ago, everybody said JP Morgan was fine. And now we're finding on the news, not so much. It's not that situation. So we've got this increase of volume of information coming at us. We're on overload. And at the same time, we're suffering from a trust deficit, rightly so, and attention deficit because of the volume of information. That makes it hard to process jargon as usual. So we have to change as marketers if we really, really want to connect. The days of the simple, fun kind of, easy marketing, sort of the 1950s, Betty Crocker, is just gone. That age of simplicity, and you had a pitchman, and everything was simple, and you had a simple commercial. Those days are gone, and they're probably not coming back. What we have today is this, what I call a marketing hostage situation. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of you can relate because not only are you in business, but you're consumers. It's the situation you see where we're shoving collateral at our clients and our customers. All the collateral has jargon that's very specific to our business. Whether you're in the legal profession or you're in technology, real estate, whatever it is, we're shoving our language at our customers, and we're forcing them to try to digest this rather than speaking in a language that customers get. And in their world, they care about themselves and their interests and their needs. And when we're shoving jargon at people, we are taking our customers hostage. That's exactly what we're doing. And it's not right. We got to stop it. And we're probably committing, some of us, what I call random facts of violence. We're shoving people under the faucet of just data spew. So we're just giving them just an overload of facts as if more facts will help them make better decisions. And just to throw it out there, 79.3% of facts are made up. And hopefully you see what I did there. It's outrageous. There's so much going on. I was on a call the other day, and somebody was trying to sell me some email marketing software to be able to do deep targeting. And before I was even asked really what I needed, this salesperson had given me 20 product features, most of which I didn't need and I didn't care about. So I felt like my head was being shoved under a faucet of just nothing but random facts data spew, most of which were irrelevant to my human needs and my human issue. And that's a surefire way to lose your customer before you. There's a couple different things. Before I get into the antidotes, there's a couple different things that you've seen, and this is sort of what this jargon overload and data spew looks like today. You know, we've got what I call the beaches approach, and you've seen this. You may not recognize it as such, but you will after today. And it's where people are talking all about themselves. It's our patented methodologies provide world-class, best-of-breed solutions, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And you may have seen the movie with Bette Midler, Beaches, and there's a great scene where she's talking to Barbara Hershey, who plays her best friend in the movie. She says, well, that's enough about me. What do you think of me? And the whole communication is about her. It's never about Barbara Hershey's character. It's never about her needs. And that's how it feels. So some of us might be guilty of the beaches approach. Not good. Then there's the blah, 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 and you've seen this one too. A lot of organizations are guilty, and it looks a little something like this. We gamify learning interactions for paradigm shifts in large organizations. First of all, I have no idea what you're talking about as a customer. Second of all, you're talking about yourself. We this, we that. You've not mentioned anything about my needs as the customer or why I should even care. Thirdly, there's so much jargon there and so many buzzwords, I can't decipher at the end of the day what you do for me. Gamify. Why do I need to know that? How does that help me? What's a paradigm shift? That doesn't do anything for me. And again, as I've said before, if you have to tell your audience that you're paradigm shifting or that you're revolutionary, chances are you're not. And your customer never thinks so. And we can be as clever as we want to be in B2B as marketers. But if our audiences don't understand what the heck we're talking about, we've failed. So the burden of clarity is always on us as communicators to be as clear as possible. The burden is never on our audience. And if you don't think that's the case, you're probably losing those relationships before they've ever started. And we don't want to do that as marketers because we say we're all about relationships. Then there's the stretch. And this one we've all seen. The stretch, which is we oversell and we overhype what our product is. And by the time we're done with it, it's so unrecognizable to any real need. It looks something like this. Our robust and revolutionary web-based education platform is saving lives. And this is an actual pitch that somebody gave me. They were creating a curriculum-based software for universities as a single repository for all curriculum around the university. And she was claiming that her tool, her software tool for higher education, was saving lives. So there's a credibility problem before you've ever started with your customer. Not only is it not human, but it's not even realistic. So it's really important to be commensurate, to be accurate, and to not overhype and oversell what we do, but to really be human. Emotional impact matters. This is the thing that's really important, and I think we know that. There's a lot of research that's been done in the last few years in the field of neuroscience marketing. And there's some really, really great discoveries, things that marketers have sort of always known in their gut, but now we have really great research that actually spells this out. We know that stories stick, for example, and we know that the best way to actually reach your prospect is not through their rational brain. If you're aiming at the logic brain, you're aiming at the wrong place. You've got to aim for sort of the gut and the heart of your customer. And we know from books like Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, which is a great book, we know that customers, more often than not, do not make rational, logical choices. We simply don't. And the funny thing, the funny paradox about being human is that we irrationally believe that we're rational. But we're not. We're emotional animals that will make a decision in our gut and look for rational information to justify and rationalize the decision that we've already made in our gut. So the big takeaway I want you to sort of remember here is that emotional impact matters, and it matters very deeply. So how does marketing make us feel? That's the really important thing. We get a feeling from marketing. Now, sometimes the feeling is a really, really crappy bad one, and people run from you, or you run from them, and that's not good. That's not what we're going for. How does marketing make us feel? So you need to think about it from your customer's perspective. What do you want them to not just think, but feel and do? And I will never move people to do something, to any call to action, if I don't have them feel something for me first, other than apathy or antipathy. I need them to really like who I am, like what I'm about, believe that I'm looking out for their best interest. Facts are filtered. At the end of the day, facts are completely filtered, and we're left with feelings. So the conscious mind can't process all those facts. Remember that chart that I showed you. There's just too much. When I get on facts overload, I'm left with a feeling, and I use that feeling as the barometer for making decisions. And that's a really key point today. This is how people have always thought in business that customers make decisions. Yeah, we're logical. You look at the green bar. Well, that's me, we'd all say. That's how I decide. I'm rational. The other people aren't. But I'm purely rational, and I make decisions that way. And in fact, this is what's really true. Most of us make that emotional decision. We've already decided in our gut. You've already decided what you're going to buy for your next purchase if you're buying something from a company. You're just looking to verify that with data. And those are the facts. The facts are we're not as rational, and there's a really great reason for that. So I want to talk about now that we've talked about that, I want to give you 3 ways that you can actually humanize what you do. Everybody communicates, but few of us really connect. And why is connecting so important? Well, in a world of increasing noise, as we all know, the only way to be heard, to cut through those layers, and to really form that relationship with your customer, you have to do something different. If you follow what everybody else is doing, it's a surefire way to lose. And actually, studies are showing that when you tell a story, when you connect at that deeper level, again, you are forming a relationship and you are getting past the logic brain filter and actually really connecting with your audience. You actually improve your marketing results. So 3 things I'm going to talk about today. I could talk about a lot of things, and I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't be keeping it human, and that would be overloading you. So the first thing is stories. If you really want to connect with your audience, you have to master the fact that marketing is about storytelling. I'll say it again because it's so important. Great marketing is about telling great stories. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like for us? Well, one thing we all have to remember is that as people, we're storytelling animals. We are wired to tell stories. It's part of our human DNA, folks. There's a reason we all love stories so much, and that's just simply because they're memorable. Facts, not so much. And this cave painting, some of you will recognize it. It's about 15,000 years old, and it's in Lascaux, France, and it's one of the first cave paintings that was discovered. So when Grog had to communicate information about the hunt, he and his friends, I'm sure he had help, created beautiful paintings that communicated really important information. He didn't issue a press release. He didn't use jargon. He didn't talk about disruptive and game-changing aero technology. It was about the story, and it was about, this is what you need to know. It was about survival, and that's how we pass things down. So our brains love stories, and that is just part of that good old-fashioned human DNA, so use it. I want you to think about stories rather than messaging. When we talk about messaging, we're talking about how do I make my product fit into the life of a customer. But we really want to understand more about the customer, and we want to talk at a larger level. A lot of you remember probably this commercial from the last Super Bowl. It was a great commercial, and it was Volkswagen that did the commercial. And I couldn't tell you what they were selling. I can't remember if it was a Jetta or if it was a Passat. I have no memory of that. I couldn't tell you what the price point was. I couldn't tell you what the lending deal was and what service options I could get. Any of that stuff. I can't remember. But what I remember is this cute little guy. And the fact that they used a universal story, sort of good versus evil, Star Wars, to actually base as the background for their commercial. That's what I remember. And we'll talk about stories and archetypes in a second here. Some of you might be familiar with the work of Joseph Campbell. He talked about the 7 different types of stories that, regardless of what culture you come from, every culture on the planet has very similar stories. We have the underdog story. We have the good versus evil. We have overcoming obstacles. You know, Luke Skywalker fights evil and triumphs. We have all these stories and story archetypes. And I would argue that you could use many of these story archetypes to advance some really wonderful stories that would connect with your audience. When we think about story, there's just a lot of stuff out there. What do we mean by story? Well, anything can be fodder for a story. There's a lot of ways you can connect with your audience, and let's talk about that because I think story ideas are everywhere. They exist all around us. We just have to know how to mine them and how to shape them into a way that our customers and our audiences can really appreciate. There's all kinds of things. Our origin story, what I call our purpose story. Why did we start our company? What was it that made us want to leave maybe corporate America and start our own business, for example? That's an underdog story. How do we make that something that our customers can relate? Again, people don't trust big companies. How can we play into that and highlight a story that our customers will care about? Stories about your technology aren't going to work so well. And we'll talk more about that in another slide or two. But we could talk about what we do as long as it relates to the human need that people have. How do we help people do their business? Nobody cares that I sell technology, but if my technology helps them find new customers and make them loyal, that's what they care about. We can also talk about customer stories. Customer stories are credible, and they're wonderful. What about our mission or our values, the things that make us uniquely who we are? What about the times we screwed up? Stories of failure can actually be wonderful as long as we overcame those obstacles and we're really honest about it. It's human. It's human to make mistakes, to try and to learn from them. It's very honest. People love that because they can relate to it. So what are our victories? What are our defeats? What about the company history makes us really unique or puts us in a unique situation to be able to solve that customer's problems? Those are the types of things that we need to think about. But we always have to remember the story's not for us. It's not about us. So the only thing that that customer with a question mark in his head cares about is him or her and their needs. Seth Godin, who's a really fabulous marketing writer and blogger, talks a lot about we're living in the age of me-mail. Nobody wants email. We want me-mail because we want it to be customized to us. We are the center of our own universes, right? So when you look at sort of that graphic there with the me, products revolve around us. We don't revolve around products. For us to be loyal, we need to make sure that that product or that service or that company gets who we are. We're not fitting into their life. They need to justify how they fit into. That's what stories can help us do. I want you to think about your brand as essentially an emoticon. The way that our brains work is, again, we're thinking in feelings and emotions. So we've already established a feeling for everybody you do business with. For everybody that you've ever touched, there's an emoticon for that brand in your head. So the question becomes is, what feeling are you leaving people when they're interacting with you? Is it love? Is it, is it the spider? Is it creepy? Because that's not good. Is it happy? What is it? There is an emoticon underlying every touch. That's something that we need to think about. Another way to think about stories and another easy way to humanize what you're doing to really connect is to think in metaphors and analogies. These are your friends. These are not just something your teacher told you in grade school. What's a simile? What's a metaphor? And you had to memorize it. There was good reason that he or she had you do that. They are your friends. Metaphors and analogies, they help us simplify the world around us. And especially if you're selling technology and you're selling something that is very complex, customers need to be able to frame it and anchor what you do in a way that is relevant for them. So to the extent that you can use an analogy or a metaphor that works, it will simplify complexity. It will help you. So find a way to do that. I was working with a company that had very complex products and very complex sales cycles, and they were basically helping marketing operations within a company. And one of the ways that we quickly learned people could identify with what they did was to talk about what they did as being the central nervous system. That's the role of marketing operations. Sends communications throughout the body. It makes sure everything is running smoothly, and when there's a problem, it regulates the system, and it does interventions, and it fixes things. It makes sure that information gets to the right parts of the body. And that was an analogy that customers got, rather than explaining in 50 different jargon and buzzwords what we did. So use them when you got them. Here's the most important part about stories. This is super important, so I'll say it twice. Customers don't buy what we make. They buy who we are. Customers don't buy what we make. They buy who we are. I think that's really true when you think about it. When you buy from somebody, you're buying into a belief. You trust them. You buy who they are. The technology will change. The products will change. You're buying who they are. I think that's really important. And there's a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, and he talks a lot about the why. Now, the why is not a new concept. It's not new to the world. But I think what Sinek does is he packages this and frames it in a really important, interesting way for us to consume. And what he says is, and I think he's right, is that way too much marketing focuses in two areas it shouldn't. We focus too much of our marketing on the how we get results, our unique methodology, our patented IP, blah, 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 me, us, we. We also talk way too much about what services. We sell marketing communications. We sell computer technology. We sell IT, blah, blah, blah. That's not important. People buy why. They buy who we are. And great leaders communicate at the level of why. And it looks a little something like this. If you think about Apple, Apple's a universal recognized company, and this is the only Apple example I'll use. I think it's because it's overused, but it's a really good one. If we think about Apple, if Apple's whole pitch was, we make technology, we make computers, we make them friendly, would you like to buy one? You'd say no. There's nothing compelling in that. But if we actually turned it around and stopped talking about the what and talked about the why, you'd care. It goes like this. Apple started out understanding that there was a lot of technology out there, and it was the same, but it didn't unleash people's inner creativity. Well, what we did is we challenged the status quo in computing. We turned it on its head. We challenged every assumption you had, and we did that by creating great products and services that help you find and unleash your own creativity and to work your way. Would you like to buy one? It's a really important way of framing it, starting with who you are and why. Think about IBM. IBM's a great example. IBM's come a long way. They weren't always very human-friendly, but they had to shift because most of their revenues come from services today. And think about what IBM's done with Smarter Planet. They're not selling IT services. They're not talking about computers. They're not talking about consulting. Their why is, how do we build a smarter planet? How do we be part of the solution that provides for sustainable, renewable, environmental needs? How do we be part of that? Now, how we do that is through our consulting and through our IT service. But that's the how. The why is getting to that smarter grid, smarter planet solution. That's a really big why. Another really good example is, if you are familiar with technology, is NetApp. NetApp has cloud services. Do we really buy cloud services for cloud services? I'd argue no, because we have lots of choices. Is the fact that they do cloud services the most important thing? No. Here's what they enable people to do. Through cloud services, they enable people to work anytime, anywhere. It's not about how it happens. It's about the fact that wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter. We allow people freedom of choice to work wherever, whenever, however. It's freedom of choice to work your way. That's their why. That's the key. Another great example is Grasshopper. Some of you might be familiar with Grasshopper. Some of you might actually use the Grasshopper system. Grasshopper is a really interesting company. They actually create something that many of you have heard of, but you may not know who they are. So Grasshopper creates these voice systems such that when you call the company, it will reach out to multiple phones till it finds the person. So when you call the number, it's like a virtual PBX that reaches out. It might call the cell number. It might then not find the person. So then it will have to actually try a landline. Then it maybe will try another cell phone number. So it's a virtual system that it lets entrepreneurs do what they do best, which is build their businesses. Do I care about the technology as an entrepreneur? No. That's not the most important thing. What's important is that that technology empowers me to be mobile, to do my business, to run my business my way. So when they launched their company, they didn't even talk about the technology. What they did is they talked about creating an homage to entrepreneurs. We are all about enabling entrepreneurs to do their business their way, to be successful wherever they are, in and outside the office. That's what we help you do. We help you be the best entrepreneur you can be. That's a very powerful message versus bogging people down in technology. And you can even use numbers to tell a human story if it's in the right context. IBM did this really well. I don't care if IBM gave me a lot of facts, but what they did is they anchored their facts in a human context story. In this example, 25% of the world's food supply is lost to spoil. 80% can be eliminated with technology. Well, now I care because you've talked about the food issue. You've talked about human needs and what this means for humanity. Now I actually care. Another way to do this is through video. There's a lot of things you can do with video, and there's some funny ones. Now, in these next few slides, I'm not going to be able to show the video here, but in the version that I will post after this call, you will have the link to go see these videos. I want you to take a look at these videos. Kinaxis, a company that does supply chain management, created some very funny videos, and they parody the whole relationship between a client and the supply chain provider. And they're funny, and you wouldn't think that B2B could be funny. It can be, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But it's a way to just make people laugh without inundating them with facts overload. Now I've started a conversation. I've made you smile. And you're more likely to have a conversation with me because I didn't start off inundating you with just facts. The second thing after storytelling that I think you can do that's really important is think upside down. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I want you to upend your expectations about what you think great marketing can be. A lot of people have very limited views about what great marketing is. So I want you to be willing to throw some of those assumptions out and think upside down. Surprise your audience. Well, how do you surprise? Well, you do the unexpected. Humor humanizes, and humor works great in B2B, and there are examples of people who've been very successful using humor, and I'm really happy to say that. It's a really underappreciated device, communication device, but it connects. Humor humanizes because it forms a connection with my audience. IBM a few years ago, did a series of 7 videos called The Art of the Sale, and they were all incredibly successful. And it was just IBM parodying itself, making fun of itself, owning the message and getting in front of that message. And what they were trying to do was reach a new generation with a new product. And what they found is that it exceeded all their expectations in raising awareness, huge traffic, huge press coverage. You're not going to get tons of sales with, a big expensive piece of machinery from a video, but that's not the goal. The goal with this touch is to raise awareness and connect with your audience, open that conversation. And by those standards, IBM surpassed their expectations and did phenomenally well. So if you want a conversation, surprise your audience. Cisco's been really successful at using humor as well in their videos. They've done some very funny things with Father's Day. They've done a Valentine's Day video that was very successful for them. And what it was about is, I'm not going to bog you in for 45 seconds with all the technical features of my latest router because you'll forget them. What I'm going to do is make you laugh and smile because you're not expecting it, and it's going to open up a conversation. And you and I later can talk about the facts as you're interested. But for this first touch, I'm just going to make you smile. And again, you'll see these. I'll have the links for you in the version that you'll get. I hope you watch them because they're worth watching. The final thing after stories and after upending your expectations and thinking upside down, the final way that you can do it, I think fairly easily, is through likability. Be likable. Why does likability matter? And I'm not talking about Facebook-like. That's not what we're talking about here. But likability is correlated with trustworthiness. Do I trust you? And what that Edelman Trust Barometer found is that we trust people who are like us. I'm not going to trust the CEO. I'm not going to trust that CTO. I trust people who are like me. That's what that study found. So how do we be likable? Well, have a personality. A lot of B2B marketing, unfortunately, looks like this. It's the blah, blah, blah approach because we have the people at the top. We have our PR agency. We have maybe the CEO. We have our formal executives doing very formal things. And it ends up sounding like PR spin, which is exactly what it is. And everybody recognizes it for what it is. There's a place for that. But if you really want to humanize your communications, you got to get beyond that. One of the things that's been really interesting in the studies and research that I've done and with talking with companies is that the best storytellers, often, shocking but true, do not live in the executive suite. I know it's hard to believe, but the rank and file, people who are closest to the customer, tend to be the people who have the best stories, are in the best position to tell those stories, and really represent the voice of the customer. And in every company, there are employees who are fabulous storytellers who can actually be very credible and likable and very human in the way that they talk. They're not bogged down by a lot of the PR spin. Personalities are good things. You know, personalities are a lot like batteries. They're not always included, but things run better with them. That's what I think. So personalities are great. If you remember this ad, this is, I think, one of the best ads, this Mac and PC ad from a few years ago when it first started. I thought it was one of the most brilliant ads I'd seen because it humanized and represented the brands as people. If you were a person, who would you be? If your company was a person, who would you be? And I think we can all look at this and really self-identify which one we are. And many of us like to believe we're Mac people. Some of us may self-identify as PC people. But it's very clear. And it's a very human, fun way to represent and to get your personality out there. So unleash your powerful storytellers. I want to talk about two really great examples, some of which you'll probably recognize. The first one in the top left corner is a young man by the name of Greg Justice, the gentleman with the glasses. He started out as an intern from Stanford at Cisco Systems, and he was very funny, and he started rapping about being the most interesting intern in the world. And what Cisco found is that not only is he funny, but he is a much better spokesperson to reach out to Gen Y people than John Chambers is. They will not listen to John Chambers. They will listen to Greg Justice. So he's credible, he's funny, he's smart, he's a great storyteller. And he started launching these raps that were very funny and very successful on YouTube. And interns at other companies would say, oh yeah, well we're the most interesting intern in the world. And he started this kind of rap thing that went back and forth among different companies. He got a lot of press. I think it attracted a lot of younger people to the company who otherwise would not look at some of the other stuffy, jargon-laden, communication. It was a really wonderful, powerful way to let go. In that lower right corner is a gentleman by the name of Frank Eliason, and he started the whole Comcast Cares program a few years ago. I think he's now works for a bank. He left Comcast Cares. But what he did is, without the company telling him, and he sort of went with the forgiveness versus permission model, he went out on Twitter, and he started trolling Twitter for people who were complaining about how sucky Comcast is. And there was no shortage of people saying how sucky Comcast was, as you can imagine. And so he would actually single-handedly started to go to those people and solve their problems. He would find out how to route them in the company, how to get them to the right person who could solve their problem. If he wasn't the guy, he'd find somebody who was. So he single-handedly, more than any one person, changed the perception of Comcast Cares and the way that they handled customer service inquiries. And in fact, he was so successful that his model has been replicated by a lot of other companies, including Best Buy. But he was a real face. He was a real person. He wasn't co-opted. He wasn't paid by the CEO to go do it. He just went out, saw a need, did it, and he was so successful that the company said, let's not mess with this. He's a real person that people can relate to, and he's getting it done. And it was incredibly successful. So the main point here is there's a lot of ways to humanize with your people. Let your best storytellers and problem solvers out there. Bring that personality forward and give a human dimension to the ways that you touch your customer. Really super important. So I know I've said a lot of things, and I always like to say that, I'll throw a lot of things out there, and you might hear a few things, and the rest of it is blah, blah, blah. But if you only take away a couple things, that's great. And if you put them to use immediately, I think you'll start to see some really wonderful changes. So ask yourself, as you're thinking about your marketing, where can I humanize? Well, again, the three things that we talked about today were the following. How do we create simple feeling stories? How do we get to our why? Start to identify your why and get your story about your why out there. Be consistent, but get that why out front. Not the jargon, not the what, not the how. Get your why out there. Secondly, think upside down. And part of thinking upside down is changing expectations. Lighten up. It's okay to have fun. Fun is a human emotion, and that is a surefire way to connect with your audience. Opened up a connection once you've made somebody laugh. It's okay. Even in B2B, there are human beings, not robots, who like to laugh. And that's been my experience. And then finally, be likable. And likability means people and personality. It's okay to show a personality. B2B does not mean blah, boring. Relationships happen between people, not between businesses. It's people to people. My people solve the problems that your people are facing. So get your best storytellers out there. Give them a little bit of rein. If they're great at it, it's going to come back to you, because those are the people who are closest to the customer to be able to tell those stories and be able to put that human dimension out. Give your company that personality, as long as it's in accordance with your values. Lighten up, have that fun, and have that personality. I have a saying that I want to leave you with before we take questions. There's a lot of things competing for your time, so I always say this. Time flies, but you are the pilot. So be the change. And if you make the change in the next couple of weeks, you'll start getting results really quickly. Thank you for keeping it human with me. I hope you found that useful, and I'm most certainly happy to take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And as she mentioned, we will now open the floor up to some Q&A. So again, if you have any questions for Kathy, I recommend that you type in your questions in the question window provided on your screen, and we will receive that and respond accordingly.
I've got a question that's come in here that I want to answer, and I think it's a question that probably a lot of you might be thinking about, and that is, how do I get to my why? Where do I peel back the onions and the layers to get to my why? And one place I really recommend that you start is to step back, forget about your services, forget about your IP, all that stuff, and ask yourself, what is the most human thing that we do for our customers? Why did we get into this business? What do we really empower them to do? What do we empower our customers to do? Again, it could be anything from unleashing their creativity to empowering them to be entrepreneurs, mobile, wherever they are, wherever in the world they are, they have the freedom to run their business. Maybe it's allowing them the ability to work anytime, anywhere, from any place in the world. That's what you're talking about with the why. So again, how do you empower your customers? What is the human aspiration that you really enable them to meet? And that's where I'd start with the why. Any other questions? Or?
Well, it looks like that's all for the question and answers. It doesn't look like any more are coming in for now.
No, I think that was the key question. So thank you all so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but before I let you go, I just want to let you know that you will receive an email with instructions on how to access a recording of today's webinar. I also encourage you all to check out Kathy's page on Convey, which you will be taken to at the conclusion of this, where you can check out her information and see more of her content as she continues to upload it into the system as time goes on. A recording will also be made available on her provider page as well in the aftermath, so if you'd like to check it out there, you're more than welcome to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Kathy, thank you for presenting today, and everybody, thank you for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.